From the Skyterra Wellness Retreat, this is the Inspired Intentions Podcast, where we help people build the skills and mindset to live a healthy life. Hey everyone, before we dive into today's episode, if you've been enjoying our podcast, take a moment to rate and review. It may seem like a small thing, but our ratings and reviews make a huge difference in the quality of our show. They help us reach more listeners like you so we can continue bringing you more amazing content. So, if you've found inspiration, learned something new, or just love tuning in every week, please rate the Inspired Intentions Podcast 5 stars and leave us a review and even share with a friend. We truly appreciate each and every one of you. Now let's get into the show.
Hello, Inspired Intentions listeners. Welcome back again to our guide to how to live forever. And another feature on the pillars that we teach at Skyterra, the pillars that we model our program around, and why they're so important for you, whether or not you're at Skyterra, just in terms of your long-term health, your long-term wellness, and especially today, your long-term happiness. And so today's pillar that we're highlighting in our How to Live Forever series is play. And who better to talk about play than our director of recreation and our director of probably everything else, Alan Broyhill.
Hey, here to talk about play.
Yes. And so I know we've talked about this a bit already, listeners, but with the release of our new website and refining our pillars on our website, we used to call our play pillar recreation and adventure, and we simplified it. And now we're just saying play. And not to just dive right into it, Alan, but what does that mean for you? What is play?
I like to define play as anything that brings somebody joy. So things like pickleball and being outside and hiking. Really, play can be anything that is fun for you, anything that you think about when you're at work. You're like, oh, I really would rather be on the pickleball court or whatever that thing is. It can be one of a million different things. It looks so different for everybody. I know one thing that you might consider play that some people don't is running.
Yes.
Or maybe sailing, which we talked about before.
We can talk about that again.
I know, but I think it can be a little bit of everything for anybody. For me, I define my play, my joy is getting to go fishing, getting to be in the whitewater raft, getting to hike outside, things like that. And to some other people, they would think that sounds terrible. And that's totally okay.
Yeah.
You got to find whatever brings you joy. And I think that's important. But the technical side is that no matter what it is, it's beneficial for us.
I know we've talked about this in the past, Alan, but one of the many things that I admire about you is how when you take time off of work, when you're off from Skyterra, you're doing the things that you love, which is exactly what you teach to our guests and what you talk about at our guests, which is fishing and being outside. And it's truly who you are to your core. And I think that's why the play that you teach to our guests resonates so deeply to them, because it truly is what brings you joy and what makes your heart sing.
Yeah, absolutely. I am sometimes guilty of planning for too much play in my life. I think that's maybe why that comes across to the guests so strongly, is because I prioritize it so much.
Yeah. And that's actually a good note. After this podcast, our play podcast, we will release the last in our series of How to Live Forever, and it will be rest and sleep. And of course, we'll have Teresa Osler, our general manager, on to speak about that. So look forward to that, listeners. And if you haven't already listened to the 3 earlier episodes in our How to Live Forever series, go back and listen to our features on movement, nutrition, and mindfulness. And you can listen to these in any order. And those are the 3 that we have released so far.
Yeah.
Alan, you said something a couple minutes ago, which is speaking about fun in Inspired Intentions, which of course is our signature class that you teach to our guests every Monday. It's what we named our podcast after. And I know fun is a big part of that. And what is it that you teach our guests every week as far as that goes?
It's really quite simple. It's just learning how to reflect on how you've been doing with prioritizing things in general. There's a bunch of different buckets that we talk about. I call them buckets. Imagine a bucket you're trying to fill full. You've got a bunch of them. Every single one of them has a hole in it. And I give you a garden hose and say, fill them all up. So which ones are going to get full first? Which ones are going to leak out as you prioritize some over other ones? And fun, and specifically, is one of those buckets, having, I call it the joy bucket, if you will. And it's just, how are you filling that up? How are you prioritizing it? Have you been neglecting it? Sometimes I'll ask if people are struggling with it, like, what actually brings you joy? If you do have a day off and you don't have any priorities, what are you going to do? Some people need the scenario of you're on a desert island and you have to bring some things to keep you busy and for you to have fun with. What are you going to bring? And I unfortunately meet a lot of people that don't know what those things are. And I meet a lot of people that are like me that over prioritize it sometimes too. So it's a balance act, but we really just talk about how to see how much fun you've been having or how much joy.
And how to find it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Really important.
And just speaking of how important play is, before we get into the rest of this, the title of the series is How to Live Forever.
Yeah.
And so why is play considered an essential pillar for living a long and a healthy life?
Yeah, the broad view is, I was going to go into a bunch of studies for this particular question, and honestly, there's so many out there, and it's something that I think we all intuitively know, that we have a psychological response our body does when we are in a state of play. When we are having fun, whether that be in nature or on a court or wherever that is, when we are interacting in social activities that we find joy, that it's a real measurable feel, and it has a physical and psychological effect on us in such a positive way. And when we are lacking in that, we feel it in the exact opposite way. There have been just so many studies out there about the cortisol levels in your body when you either do or don't interact with others, and when you are engaging in play or touching a plant or going on a hike or having that physical output in that fun manner. It's so strong in your body that you can actually measure it. And it's why it's such an important pillar in our program and why it leans so heavily on longevity.
For, we have the we are fortunate to be in such a beautiful part of the country. And so much of what you do for our guests and what you plan for our guests involves being outside and spending time in nature. And you talked about that a little bit, the touching a plant and fresh air. But how does spending time in nature outside, specifically, like the hiking that you do with our guests, how does that support all aspects of health, physical, cognitive, mental health?
Yeah, I think to start to answer that question, you can look at the opposite. So imagine somebody that doesn't do that, right? There's a term that a lot of folks know. I know a lot of our northern folks that come down to Skyterra experience this, and it's something that they experience in the winter. This term's called cabin fever. Are you familiar?
Honestly, Yes, I don't mean to make this about me, but where we are right now living in Boston, we are so far east that it gets dark really early, close to 4:00 right now. And being here at Skyterra, which is still in Eastern time zone, but just a little bit further west, yesterday it didn't get dark till 5:00, and I was grateful for that.
South, a little bit further south, right?
And west, though, yeah.
Yeah.
Not straight down. But I was just grateful for that extra, not even 1 hour of sunlight, but I feel that. I feel it can be depressing.
And we have a ton of guests that come from northern states during the winter, and they always talk about the blue skies, and they talk about the lack of cloud cover, the gray skies that we have here. And I think when we think about this idea of cabin fever, I think it really gives us an understanding to answer your question. How does spending time outside in nature help support us? And it plays a psychological role in our wellness. We get to spend time around plants, which have been proven to lower those cortisol levels and to make our heart sing in so many different ways. We get sunlight in our eyes, which can help improve our sleep patterns and just rest and recovery in general. And it gives us the opportunity to create a new way of getting things like active recovery in and a different type of maybe physical joy or physical play, if you will. For instance, hiking and being outside and moving your body in a fairly, I'm not calling it easy because hiking up the side of a mountain isn't easy, but a fairly mild manner. Whereas, like, if you're in a gym, it's a little bit different, but it's just a different physical piece to the scenario. And you can make it more difficult or you can make it easy. You can put a 30-pound pack on your back and hike up a mountain, or you could just, take your cell phone and go hike up the same thing. You're going to have two completely different experiences. But being able to be outside and having that availability is critical for our mental health.
And when we talk specifically about hiking, I know there are some pretty tangible benefits to hiking. And, you talked about how it's customizable, but what are some other benefits of hiking and why is it so important to our play program here at Skyterra? I mean, we even have once a year, we do a really specific hike week.
Oh, yeah.
Why is that so important?
Yeah, I think, again, it's a lot of that rest and recovery that we talked about, that active rest and recovery, and just the connection to nature. So we typically have a progressive hiking program here throughout the week. So there's availability for just getting outside and moving all the way through like a more intensive, like 2,000 feet of gain over 6 miles. And so somebody can experience whatever level of that they would like to. But just getting outside and exposing yourself to that sun, that clean air, which again can help improve sleep. It can help improve your cortisol levels. It can help to get a lot of nutrients flowing to different parts of your body when you're sore from weightlifting or whatever. It helps with appetite and hunger and that chemical leptin in our body. So there's a lot of really good benefits and why it's been such a critical part of our program ever since we started. Nature in general is something that I think we could all use a little bit more of.
Sure, yes.
And specifically here where we live at, we're 65% public land. So I say where we live here at, where Skyterra is located at, it's a ton of national forest, state forest, and there's so many opportunities to also just go see something pretty.
And we've talked about before, Alan, because we get the question all the time, well, what do you guys do in the winter? And you wrote a beautiful blog about all of the things that happen here in the winter and why it can be a benefit to be outside. But year round, we're hiking. And can you just talk briefly again about, obviously, we know what it's like in the summer and we know what it's like to be hiking in the warm weather, but on the off quote unquote off season when it might be a little bit colder, what are hikes like here?
Yeah, when the parking lots aren't full, when there's not people traveling from all over the world to come here and spend time in our mountains, what is it like? It's beautiful. I think it's honestly one of my favorite times of year to be outside because the mountains are so beautiful right now. We live in the Blue Ridge Mountains, part of the Appalachian Mountain Range, and they get their name from the blue color that you get to see during the wintertime when all the leaves are off. And that exposure of that blue hue at a distance, you get to see so many more mountain views because of it, because of the leaf fall that's off, and that color is just amplified. The trails are not busy at all. I call us a 365-day program. There's not basically a time of year that we can't go hiking somewhere. We really don't get a lot of snow here, which is great. And I've hiked in the snow with guests before, just mild dustings, nothing dangerous by any means. But we always have the availability of going somewhere and seeing something beautiful during the winter. It's really quite special. again, that cabin fever idea. There's part of the country that can't do that does not have a 365-day availability of being able to go outside and expose themselves to that sunlight and get that outside boost that they need, that play boost that they need. So I think it's really special that we live in a place that you can get that, and that I get to show our guests that on so many different levels.
Alan, I know we get a lot of folks who don't live in this area who may be coming to Skyterra from cities or bigger urban areas, who may, as I might imagine, discover a love of being outside and a love of hiking, especially if they have time to spend a hike with you. What do you say to them? Like, go back home to your city, and it's busy. As you don't necessarily have the ability to go up into the mountains and be by yourself. How do you advise people to find a green space of their own at home?
Yeah, there's a lot of different angles to this. I'd like to broaden it a bit, even beyond hiking, and just say that there's a lot of resources out there for folks that get them connected to communities that do play things, if you will. Hiking groups. I suggest all the time that people go try and find a Facebook hiking group in their area. REI has programs. There's your local outdoor store that sells hiking backpacks or hiking boots, probably knows of either a group or an area that you should go check out. Same thing with racket sports, like your local YMCA or your local whatever can get you connected in a community where you can go play pickleball or tennis or whatever your sport is. Same thing with like gyms and gym memberships and any other community-based kind of play things. There's always a community around it, right? And the community is one of the things that makes any play sport special. We as humans are meant to be social, right? And it can play a big role in just our level of enjoyment, because sometimes people don't like hiking by themselves, or it's hard to play pickleball by yourself.
Yeah.
You can only hit the backboard so many times. So those communities can play a difference. And so when I'm talking to guests, I'm like, go find a group. I know it sounds very simple, but go find a group. I guarantee there's dozens of them near you, and you can find one that is exactly what you're looking for, and it can help aid in that play part in your life.
And I realize that we have not yet listed out all of the play opportunities that we have here at Skyterra. We've talked a lot about hiking, talked about pickleball. What are the other opportunities that we have for guests?
Gosh, we do stuff all year round.
Yeah.
It's so seasonal. We have water sports of all various kinds. We have paddle boarding, one-on-ones, paddleboard classes, instructions, kayaking. We did river tubing on the 4th of July last year. We have a guest here this week that was talking about how much fun that was to go get in the river. He lives in a place where there's snakes and alligators, and he was like, I didn't have to worry about the snakes and alligators part. That was super cool.
That seems like a huge benefit, not have to worry about that.
Yeah, right? You just get to relax, enjoy the river. Obviously, we do hiking programs. We've introduced things like bird watching. We've introduced things like archery. We've been doing that for a long time. Gosh, the list goes on and on. There's so many seasonal things that I have a list in one of my documents of like, all right, this is happening this time of year. Like the monarch butterflies are here from now to now.
Oh, the blue ghost fireflies.
Great example.
Yes.
I don't know how I forgot that one. Blue ghost fireflies, a great example. This is this date to this date. It gives you a different experience, So there's a lot that this area lends to offer, and a lot of stuff I'm excited about. One thing I want to try and get in on the schedule this year is river snorkeling.
Really?
Yeah. I've got a friend that runs a river snorkeling program, and they do. It's so biodiverse our river systems are, and they do. It's like being in the Caribbean and going out to a coral reef where you're seeing hundreds and hundreds of different types of plants and fish. Same thing in our rivers here. I just don't think a lot of people realize that. So we're always trying to add new stuff. There's always something else that we can figure out, something else around the corner that we're looking forward to. And maybe we'll do llama petting or something.
Yes.
There's a guy that does that here locally. Yeah.
You know, I was just when you were talking, I was thinking back about at the beginning of this episode, you were talking about your Inspired Intentions class and how sometimes guests have just been in the mode of career and the rush of life, and they haven't stopped to think about all of the things that would be fun to them and what specifically brings them joy, and just how beautiful it is that they could come to a place like Skyterra and have a menu of things to choose from.
Yeah.
And try in a really safe environment with, support, and figure out what it is that is fun for them.
Holds a special place in my heart. I can think of one person I met very specifically that hadn't been on a vacation in 10 years because work and life, right?
Yeah.
And the joy of even just getting out and going on a 1 mile river walk with me was immense. And that experience that Skyterra brought to that person was, I think, uniquely profound in their life in a way that they weren't expecting. And it sent them on a different trajectory that something so minor you never thought it would have. I know this because I've stayed in contact with this person, but it's really, really interesting.
Turning point.
Very much so. Very much so.
So, Ellen, we've talked about finding groups after you leave Skyterra to find different outdoor activities that you can do with other people. But what is that importance when it comes to finding community? How is it that, being outside, doing things that are fun, how is it even amplified in terms of its benefits when you're doing it with other people?
I think one of the biggest study groups to answer this question are blue zones. For a lot of people, there's been documentaries on them. They have a whole website on like what a blue zone is. But basically a blue zone, it's just a geographical area where honestly people live longer than average lives. They look at a lot of things like their lifestyle, their diet, and a lot of those types of pieces, and they kind of broke it down into like, okay, here's 5 things that are super common amongst these groups. 5 things, right? It goes into great detail. It's really interesting data. Like it can go down to like, well, these people, like a lot of them eat sweet potatoes, stuff like that. But the big one for me, for the play side of things and how that equates to actually living longer, is this idea of community. Every single one of these groups not only walked a lot, not only lived in places that had hills, interestingly enough, but they had a super deep connection with their family and their community around them. And they did fun play things together, whether that be gardening, whether that be a racket sport, whether that just be a community walking group where they did XYZ thing. This is not anecdotal. This is people are living longer in these areas that spend time doing fun things with other people. It's basically what it boils down to.
So, Ellen, for the guests who would be dropped on a desert island and unsure of what to bring with them for fun, to the very, very busy adult who can't figure out how to include play in their already very busy life, who, for the thought of, up until the very last hour of daylight on Sunday being outside, they cannot imagine. What are some simple ways for our listeners to just prioritize play in their lives and recreation in their lives and just start to make time for it?
Yeah, I think for the person that's like on the desert island and they're like, I don't know what I would bring, the easy answer to that for everyone is to try something new. So you all have Google, everybody has it, and you type in your area code and you just look for things that people are doing around you. Like if you looked here, you would see a ton of mountain biking stores, using this as an example. Like, wow, there's a lot of mountain biking stores around here. That must be a thing. okay, maybe I'd go try mountain biking out. And that's a way of just testing the waters to see what's readily available to you, around you, and seeing if it's something you enjoy. There's a lot of ways to taste test and not have to commit to stuff. So for that person that doesn't know what they enjoy, maybe for whatever reason, just seeing what is readily available. Because if you live in an area that doesn't have mountains and a ton of hiking may be a 3-hour drive. That's a big commitment. That takes a long time.
Yeah.
But maybe there's something else around you that people are really into that you can get into, or maybe you might enjoy, and make a list and just check them off. Take 6 months and just try and taste test some of these things that you may not have ever realized was so available to you. For the person that's like, well, I know what I enjoy, but it hasn't been a priority. I call that making, the joy account the martyr, if you will, because like everything else has gotten in the way of it.
Yeah.
All right. You have to figure out kind of what we call it a keystone habit, a habit that you have been doing that isn't serving you, that's, some people say, holding you back, something that you have been prioritizing and it just doesn't make sense. And figuring out what that thing is for you and figuring out how to replace it or do less of it. So what I mean by that is, okay, I have this thing in my head that I've been doing that isn't serving me. How can I replace that with the thing that I know that brings me joy? How do I balance those scales a little bit? How do I flip the script on myself a little bit and prioritize that and take note of how it feels? Some people are journaling folks. I'm not. Maybe that's a tactic for that. But I try and build in a moment of reflection whenever I'm doing these play fun things and seeing how that feels. And that's adding value to it, which will typically be keeping you coming back to it.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit of a script flip, but taking an account of a keystone habit can be really important, or just taste testing and figuring out what is around you that maybe might fit into your script of your life.
Thanks, Alan. Any other advice?
Get outside. I'm biased towards the outside stuff.
Yes.
I say it all the time.
For good reason.
For good reason. Get outside. It can help you live longer. Be a part of a community. It can help you live longer. Find something that brings you joy. It can help you live longer. And if that's what this series is all about, I hope that every single person listening can find that for themselves.
Yes, we do. Thanks so much, Alan.
Absolutely.
Listeners, if you have any questions for us, please reach out to inspiredintentions@skyterrawellness.com. Take a peek at our new website, which is skyterrawellness.com, and let us know what you think. And as always, thanks for listening. We wish you to live forever. At least a long and happy life.
As long as you'd like.
Thanks, Alan.
You're welcome. Thanks.
Bye. The Inspired Intentions podcast is a production of Skyterra Wellness Retreat. Special thanks to our executive producer, Alan Broyhill. Send us your questions and comments to inspiredintentions@skyterrawellness.com. Subscribe on iTunes and everywhere podcasts can be found. If someone you know might benefit from this podcast, share Inspired Intentions with them and give us a 5-star rating. Join us next week as we cut through the unrealistic noise on diets and fitness and show you how healthy living fits seamlessly into your already busy life. Thanks for listening.